How many? How many? How many? How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, what did I get up to?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a brand new edition of How Many. We decided to do an impromptu episode, mainly just to go over what the Cowboys season has looked like through the first half of the season. So far, things are looking very, very positive. We're sitting at an 8-3 record. We just got done beating the Seattle Seahawks in a very hard-fought, tight game where the offense looked great, but the defense left a lot to be desired.
Why is that?
Because Seattle's offense was terrible the past couple of weeks.
Well, there was one player in particular who was...
But the biggest reason that the Cowboys' defense collapsed was because one of the co-hosts of the two that are sitting with me, which are Sideshow Bob Bland. I also have with me Gary Grant from the great Fix This Shit Rich podcast.
How about y'all fix this shit, Rich?
He's moonlighting, cheating on his normal co-host, Mark Dempsey from the UK.
Who's sound asleep right now.
Yes. So, Bob jinxed the Cowboys defense by the day of the Cowboy game purchasing a Deron Bland jersey to coincide with his whip last name, and he basically destroyed Bland's career. Was that a fair assessment?
If you recall, he did have an interception.
What else did he have?
Second. He had a couple of plays where Donovan Wilson was up too far.
It's everybody else's fault, but his.
No, there was a couple where he had good coverage. It just was Geno Smith just dropped it right where it needed to be. But he did get burned a few times.
So, sitting at an 8-3 record, we're actually about to watch the Eagles and the 49ers do battle.
Ooh.
I'm the crazy prospector, and I love the 49er.
And unfortunately, we have to root for San Francisco, even though we hate San Francisco, because we hate Philadelphia even worse.
We're rooting against the Eagles. We're not rooting for the 49er.
And I think it's time for a little Suck It, Philly.
Oh, yeah. No, let's not chant it.
Suck It, Philly.
Suck it, Philly.
So,
Suck it, Philly.
Gary, after that Seattle win, even though, again, the offense was spectacular, Dak had a terrific game, how did you feel about how we played?
The defense has been good all year. They've had a couple of bad games, or not even bad games. They had a bad game against Arizona. They had a bad game against Seattle. Other than that, they haven't really had bad games. I don't know that they've lived up to the hype all year. Against really bad teams, they're absolutely dominant. But in front seven, I feel like Micah's out there alone. If he doesn't beat triple teams and make things happen, for the most part, they don't happen. DeMarcus Lawrence made a huge run stop late in that Seattle game. That dude's so good against the run. I get that. But I also know that he's only hit 10 sacks twice in his career. I'd just appreciate that guy if he can mix in a pressure every once in a while. It'd be great. The front seven scares me. Against really good teams, I feel like it's Micah or nothing. And if they don't get contributions from some of these other guys, it leaves them quarterback back there with plenty of time to wait on guys to come open. It's a problem. So I still feel pretty good about it because the truth is nobody in the NFL is very good, Eagles included. They have squeaked by so many games.
It almost feels like the Eagles always have one lucky bounce, one lucky play go their way in almost
Or a couple of
every
no
game.
calls.
Yeah.
They literally ripped the jersey off of two of the Buffalo Bills offensive players last week and with no call on either one. Like, it's ridiculous.
And then in the Kansas City game, Kelsey, fumbles right at the goal line?
And Valdez-Scantling dropped the game winner. He was wide open running down the field by himself. Ball hit him right in the hands. He just dropped it. And it was 6. It was the winner.
Now, is that indicative that they are a team that's just lucky, or are they like Mike used to say, Mike Reiner, that effing team that everything just breaks their way?
Well, I mean, even when they were 2-14, they were that effing team because they're Philadelphia. But the truth is, I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop with them, but they keep winning games. So no matter how they get it done, they keep getting it done. And the bottom line is, everybody here would take that. Like, the Cowboys could frustrate us every week, but if they had one loss right now, we'd say, fuck, they're frustrating, but they've got one loss. That's the Eagles. They're squeaking by bad teams. You know, we thrashed Washington. They've been taken to the edge by Washington twice.
Yep.
They're just good enough. Whatever good enough is, they're good enough.
Now, the good news is they play San Francisco today, and if the 49ers can do us a solid and give them a loss, we'll only be a game behind them with another game upcoming.
Yeah, but we need two.
Yeah, because they'll have the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
If we can get a win against them and have the 49ers beat them today, there's still potentially enough games left where they could maybe have a slip up.
Yeah.
They have Miami still.
No, they've already beaten Miami.
Oh, we have Miami.
We have Miami.
Yes, yeah.
I was going to say.
And Buffalo.
The Miami-Philadelphia game was the one when we were in Vegas.
Yeah, that's when I lost.
And you lost your ass.
I went all in on Miami. Another Jake Show Bob moment of the year.
Yeah, it hurts to miss that one.
Yeah.
At some point, we do need to do a Vegas recap and just
we-
kind of go over
best-
all of the bets
Best left
that
undiscussed.
What was the total losses on?
I lost the grand.
Is that why we're in this shack?
Yeah, that's why we're recording.
Yeah,
it.
we're actually recording in Bob's new abode, which is a studio apartment with a Murphy bed. And then we're having
Murphy
to
tub.
sit Indian style on the floor to record this episode.
Bob,
because he has
Bob
no
has a
furniture.
living room that is so small, he has got a remote for everything in the room. So he's got 8 remotes, and yet he could sit in his chair, turn all lights on and off, manipulate the TV and the stereo without ever sitting up.
And every 5 minutes he has to get up and restart his washer and dryer.
No. Phrasing. Every 6 minutes he has to get up and rebalance his load.
Phrasing?
So, we've gotten Gary's opinion on the Cowboy season so far. Bob, how are you feeling?
I feel good about it.
I feel good. I knew that I wouldn't.
Ultimately, that Cardinals loss is they're going to take that to their effing grave, dude. Today is the only other game they might win this year. They're beating the Steelers right now. They haven't beaten anybody else. For us to be the only team they've beaten all year, it's just ridiculous.
Well, now, is it fair to say, though, that they may have pulled off a couple more wins if they had kept Joshua Dobbs? Because that guy went on to Minnesota and kept winning games there he wasn't supposed to win.
That's true. He did ball out that day.
So they went into tank mode after
After
they
the
beat
Cowboys.
us.
I think the front office wants to be in tank mode, but players don't tank.
Yeah.
Especially considering that they brought Kyler Murray back. You would think if they wanted to just go full tank, they would have just sat him for the year. Maybe they wanted to get him some reps.
Or they know what the rest of us know, and that is he sucks, and that helps them tank.
That's a very good point. He is very spare. So now that we are kind of in the mode where we feel like it's going to be a wild card season, what do you feel our chances are in getting past the second round of the playoffs? Because I think ultimately that's McCarthy's goal at this point, right? He needs to make progress on all of the playoff success he's had in the past, because there's going to be a certain point where, you know, making it to the wild card round, making it to the divisional round is not going to be enough, and he needs to get to the championship game. Do you feel like this team is in position to do that?
I do.
All right, Bob. So why do you feel, Bob, that they can do it?
I think Gary touched on it earlier. There is no team in the NFL that's unbeatable or unstoppable. Even though the Eagles have that record, they can be beaten. They have vulnerabilities. When we play our best, the only time we lose really is when we beat ourselves. So we can beat anybody. And we're going to go into the playoffs with such a good record as a wild card. We're going to end up at whoever wins the NFC South with probably a losing or a 500 record.
And that's going to be the
Atlanta
Saints
or the
or
Saints.
Falcons, right?
Right. So basically, it's going to be a bye week.
The truth is, none of that really matters. You're either good enough to go beat Philadelphia and San Francisco, or you're not.
Yes.
And if you're not, then too bad. And if you are, then go do it. And it was funny when just a second ago when Junior was talking about missing out on winning the division and having to go in as a wild card, I'm wearing my Rangers t-shirt, and I kind of smiled and rubbed my shirt because the truth is that's exactly what happened to Texas.
Yep.
They missed out on winning the division, caused a lot of hand-wringing, people freaking out. Oh, they had the division all year long, and they just lost it because they couldn't win one more game. And, at the end, it didn't matter. They went down to Tampa, and they swept them, and they went to Baltimore, and they handled that, and they just took care of their business. They did everything they needed to do. When they got to Houston, they handled them. You can overcome those kinds of hurdles. You don't just look at the regular season and say, well, Philadelphia beat us earlier this year, so we don't have a chance to beat them next week because they already beat us. And then we would have no chance in the playoffs because they already beat us. You do have a chance. You have every chance. All you have to do is go out there and play well.
Oh.
And the Rangers have proven that. So, the Cowboys just need a little of that mojo. And the way they've been acting lately, the way Dak is yoked up and messing with people and Ferg getting in people's faces, if they keep that kind of attitude and they keep playing that way, they can go beat anybody, but they have to actually do it.
Now, I will say, Bob is treating the wild card like a bye week. There has been instances in the past where, division winners with bad records have gone on to the next round.
That's true. Seattle did it one year.
Yeah, Seattle did it to New Orleans one season.
Yes. New Orleans actually has a pretty decent defense, too. You'd better be aware that they can rush the quarterback and they can pick passes off. So
yeah, I definitely would be more wary of the Saints than the Falcons. I think the Falcons are a bad team. They've got Bijan Robinson, and that's it. The rest of that team is garbage.
Now, the Saints have a pretty garbage quarterback,
Yes.
Derek Carr.
Yes.
So,
And a garbage coach.
well, and Derek Carr's never put any points on the Cowboys.
except that
Except on
Thanksgiving
Thanksgiving.
game against the Raiders when he completely destroyed our secondary.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying.
Now, I will say, even though Carr is having a bad year, they have a fantastic receiving core.
Yes, they do.
They have a great running back.
Yep.
Yes, they do.
Taysom Hill is a very good X factor, running the ball, especially on the goal line. They have some weapons, and their defense is not terrible.
Yeah.
So, and if they're playing at home, they have a very good home field advantage too. Even though there will probably be a lot of Cowboy fans there, the Saints fan base is pretty strong.
Yeah, it's not a gimme. You got to show up. I mean, Arizona is proof. You have to show up.
Now, Gary, considering the fact that we are going to probably be a wild card, you were saying that the Eagles are not, unbeatable. They have their flaws. How would you feel if we ended up having to go against San Francisco? To me, San Francisco gives me a lot of the vibes that I used to get when we got stuck having to play Green Bay in the playoffs and having to face Aaron Rodgers over and over and over again. San Francisco is starting to make me feel that way after losing to them the last 2 years. And this year they completely destroyed us. So with all that in mind, would you feel confident that this Cowboy team would do well on the road at San Francisco in the playoffs, should it end up being that?
I think the offense would fare a lot better than they did when we played San Francisco earlier in the year, and that could be complementary to helping the defense. The defense was pretty bad against them earlier this year, but so was the offense, so that kind of put the defense on the field a lot, which makes it harder. If you go back to our previous matchups the last couple of years, the games have actually been really tight. We just didn't win them. If they play that kind of game, I would feel better about the offense making the couple of plays that could make a difference. How good did everybody feel in 92 going into San Francisco? Like, that was supposed to be the team is a year away. This is the veteran Niners against the upstart Cowboys, and they probably don't have it. And then they went in there and won the game. It seems like right now is role reversal to that.
Yeah.
It's like back then we kept seeing the Niners, and even though at first we weren't supposed to beat them, and then we were expected to beat them, and we did, now it's gotten to be the other way around. But if you remember what happened in the middle of the little dynasty, or 92, 3-5 Cowboys, what happened in 94? The Niners got the monkey off their back. They literally, Steve Young, get the monkey off my back.
Someone take the monkey off my back, please! Oh, it was a gorilla!
Maybe this year could be that year for us. If the roles are reversed, maybe this year is the year that the Cowboys get by.
Yep.
So who knows? I feel fine about this team facing anybody if you tell me they're showing up. But if you tell me that they're going to come out and lay an egg like they did defensively a couple of days ago against Seattle, or like they did completely against Arizona and San Francisco, then I'll tell you I don't even feel good about winning the New Orleans game or the Atlanta game. So it just depends on which team shows up.
San Francisco is a much more difficult matchup for us than the Eagles. I don't think the Eagles are anywhere near as tough a matchup for us. My only concern with the 49ers, really, though, for the Cowboys is the mental aspect of it. Like, they've lost to them now, 3 times in a row? I think the last 2 playoffs plus this. So you got to start not having that be that default thought process. It's like, oh, man, we just can't beat these guys. So I like what Gary talked about with Dak. Dak's got the edge now mentally. He's being a leader. I think it all comes down to McCarthy. And you talk about the Rangers, that's a great example, but man, I would sure love it if McCarthy was more like Bochy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what really helped the Rangers.
It is, and that's what we're missing. But, maybe they get it from Quinn. Maybe they get it from somebody else. Maybe it's not just him.
Now, the one thing that I do feel confident about, which has been a change from years past, this year, I think a lot of the people that were doubting the Cowboys at the quarterback position are now having to stand up, and salute the performance of Dak Prescott this year. He has been so great to the point where now he's probably going to be getting some MVP voting. And I think we're actually seeing a version of Dak that really lives up to the contract. Like, we signed the contract, and then the first year after he signed it, he had the issue with the interceptions last year, and people were doubting whether he was going to even be able to be the franchise quarterback moving forward. This year, he has put all of that to bed, and he is the one constant on the offense that I feel can carry over into the postseason.
I'm not in the camp that ever doubted Dak, so I know what you're saying. I felt like he's lived up to the contract because the truth is there were people that were higher paid than him, and he's a top 5 quarterback. I've always felt that way. I've always thought, like, if you drafted him into Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes into Dallas, we'd be having the same conversation, only Dak would be more highly regarded and Mahomes would be the one that was controversial because he would be in an archaic offense with head coaches that refuse to use him to win games and instead just use him to try to convert third downs. That they leave in long third downs because they demand to run the ball on first and second down even though they're bad at it. So most of what his problem has been is the fact that he has a star on his helmet. That's his biggest flaw, is that he's got a star on his helmet, and that makes, him have a lot of detractors in the national media, which just feeds everybody that wants to say anything negative about him anyway. I feel fine with Dak. I feel fine with the way the offense is going. I think as long as McCarthy continues to try to base the offense on Dak and CD and Dak and Ferguson, when that is the focus of the offense, everything else works. The running game is a little bit better. The secondary pass receivers are a little bit better. CD opens up everything. He has a lot of gravity. We've seen Brandon Cooks have a 37-yard catch that was CD going across the middle and Cooks coming in behind him. And CD drags so many defenders with him, the middle of the field just opened up. Those kinds of things are important, but it doesn't work if you don't ever throw the ball to CD Lamb. You have to scare the defense into doing things. And since they started using CD Lamb in week 6, we all know what happened in week 5, the Niners, the offense has been almost unstoppable. And you look at them, they're number 1 in scoring in the league, not Miami. Everybody wants to tell you about that Miami offense, but they don't score as many points as we do. Now, it helps if you've got a DB that's got 5 pick sixes, but still, this is the highest scoring team in the league. And so the offense, I'm not worried about the offense at all. I worry about penalties, and I worry about the defense. The defense is where we seem to have recurring issues. It was a recurring issue in Arizona. It was an issue against the Niners. It was an issue in the first Eagles game, and it was an issue against Seattle. And just because we keep winning some of those games, if the offense doesn't really show up, we don't.
Bob, what do you think?
Well, going back to Dak, I think his whole career, consistently he's been a good quarterback, and at times he's been a very good quarterback. I think what's kept him from being considered great has been the critique that he's not the guy that's going to put put the team on his back and elevate and the guys around him and lead him to a win. That game the other night against Seattle, they won that game because of Dak. Dak carried the team to a win. So he's now at that point where he is the guy that's...
But can I ask you a question with that? Because this is something I hear people say.
Yeah.
All right, so go back to even his rookie year in the playoffs.
Yeah, that game.
Was he not good in the playoffs?
He was very good.
But they lost. Why?
Because Rodgers had a crazy...
But right at the end, Rodgers took what little time was left and went down and won the game for them.
Yeah.
Okay, so when Dak went out of the game the other day, could Seattle not have won that game?
That's true.
And he had a great game. But you're only changing your tone because of the W. It's not because he played different. So my contention was that if you even go back to his rookie year, he's always been that guy. He's got a lot of fourth quarter comebacks. He's a good quarterback.
Yes.
But if he leaves with a 5-point lead and a minute and 30 left on the clock, he screwed up.
Right.
Because now he's left the other team with a minute and a half to go get a touchdown and win it. And that's somehow his fault. He's penalized for us losing that game, even though he went down with sub 5 minutes left in the game and gave us the lead. That should be enough.
Yeah, and he's playing at a very, very high level consistently over an extended period of time. He's not throwing picks. He's not taking sacks. He's moving with the ball. That I think more than anything, if there's been a lull in his career, it was because after he got hurt, when he stopped being as mobile as he could be, when he was getting too stagnant in the pocket. And they play better. He plays better when he moves, when he keeps the ball, the pocket moving. So he's been doing that, and I feel really good about it. I think the defense has got to be consistent. The defense, the guys are on the roster that we need. I mean, obviously Diggs is out. You can't do anything about that. Van Der Esch is out. But they've got the guys. They've got the scheme. Quinn knows what he's doing. They just have to be more consistent. They can't have games like the other night, man. They're too good of a unit to play like that, and especially against an offense that had come in without scoring a touchdown in 7 consecutive quarters, and then they go the whole game without effing punting. You can't do that.
Now, one good thing I'll say, going back to Dak and the offense, I have seen a very positive shift in the play calling. And I think a lot of that credit has to go to McCarthy. I know he's been under fire a lot of his tenure here in terms of play calling. Some of it obviously had to do with Kellen Moore once he was jettisoned out of here. He decided to take over everything. And I want to say since the 49er game, the play calling and obviously the execution has been leaps and bounds better than what it had been in the past.
Since C.D. Lamb publicly reminded him that he was still on the roster.
That is a huge...
It's not something you should have to do if you're wide receiver one, to remind your head coach that you exist, but yes.
And the other thing they've started
Doing, which is less significant than that, but also should be mentioned, is they finally started getting Cooks involved somewhat. They were not using him.
Oh, yeah, that was
at
the
all.
media. C.D. Lamb said, hey, coach, I'm still here, and I'd like to help if I could.
Yeah.
And so he started using him. Then the media said, you bypassed the trade deadline because you said you did your trade deadline in the offseason, which would mean Cooks and Gilmore.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if Cooks was your offseason addition that was your trade deadline guy, why haven't we seen you use him?
Yeah.
And he said it's not fantasy football. And the following week, Cooks had the second most yards he's ever had in a game. That fat idiot literally forgets that he's got great players on his roster and has to be reminded by either the players themselves or the media. That's why I have a hard time giving him credit, because you literally can watch it. It's not like, I'm not trying to tie things together. C.D. Lamb said, why don't you use me more? And since then, he's used him. Then the media said, why don't you use Brandon Cooks? And since then, he's used him. You tell me, if he's the great offensive mind, why is he getting advice from current players and the media?
Now,
and it works.
Now, one thing I will say also, in addition to just the play calling, I think a couple of other things have factored into kind of this resurgence of the Cowboys offense. The offensive line, I think, has gelled and gotten better to the point where they're giving Dak more time in the pocket to hit those deeper passes. And overall, I think the philosophy has changed a little bit too, where they're now more of a pass-first, set up the run offense as opposed to trying to force the run at the beginning of the game, which I think was hurting Pollard more than helping him. I think opening the passing game up early is opening up running lanes later for Pollard to have better games. And I got to say, that's probably because McCarthy, even though he may have been listening to players and listening to the media, at least he accepted the feedback and changed. Something that wasn't happening before.
It's either that or get fired, because that's where he's headed. And I'll be happy when he does, but that's where he's headed. But the funny thing is, I mentioned this on Fix It Rich the other day. I read a tweet that said in the Commanders game, the Cowboys used motion 76% of the time, which was their highest of the season. And then the first reply underneath that said, it's kind of weird how, if you go back to the offseason, what the Cowboys said was, this is all the things they want to do. Short, quick passes, get the ball out of Dak's hands, spread the ball around to a lot of people, and run the ball a lot to be complementary to the defense. And what has made the offense work is taking every one of those things, wadding them up in a ball, and throwing them out the window. Because they are now throwing the ball deep. They're primarily going to CeeDee Lamb, and they're running the ball less, especially early in the game. It's everything that is the exact opposite of what they said they wanted to do. Their philosophy, it's all been scrapped. And since then, everything works.
Which is good. We wanted them to actually see the flaws and make the corrective adjustments.
But why do the flaws? Like, why break the window so you can fix the window? How about just don't break the window?
I guess they needed to be proven wrong before they would make the right decisions on it.
That's a fireable offense.
I agree. I agree with you also that I wouldn't shed a tear if McCarthy left, but if he is somehow able to finagle this team into a championship game or beyond, he has to come back, right? There's no getting around it.
I can hope for a heart attack.
All right, well, I think that is all the time we have for this edition of How Many. Bob, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, they can reach you at Lukewarm Tallboy on Twitter, right?
Yes.
And even though you say you're done with the podcast game, you do still do campfire songs, right?
Yeah. Campfire songs. Me and these three other dudes that just talk about music.
Okay, and so assume the juxtaposition is dead.
That's dead. Ben and Scoop is dead.
Poor Millerman.
Yeah, plausible deniability. Millerman, yeah, they're all dead.
You know what's not dead, though?
What's that?
Funky Monkey.
Oh, yeah, Funky
Yes.
Monkey. So next time you're in McKinney or anywhere in North Texas in search of luxurious gourmet snow cones, hit up Funky Monkey.
Yes, if you're in the need of shaved ice.
Listen, you don't need shaved ice.
If you want,
But you need this.
if you want a snow cone with a full slice of cheesecake shoved down it, that's your place to go. It's
Find them on Facebook. I'm telling you, if you're listening to this, you need to try it out. It is the best thing in the Metroplex.
Now, Gary, you host a terrific Cowboys podcast with your UK brother and Mark. It's at Fix It Rich.
It is.
Fix this shit, Rich.
How about y'all fix this shit, Rich?
And if somebody wants to get a hold of you and give you feedback, they can at travel_cowboy.
That is
Twitter,
correct.
right?
Yep.
Now, if you want to reach out to the podcast in general, it's at How Many Podcasts on Twitter. You can also catch all of our previous episodes at the howmanypodcast.com website. Talk to you soon.
Dallas Cowboys.